Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In this video, all-star ballots have just been released and they came out today. Got a couple people asking me maybe I should do a video on that, so I'm gonna jump right into it. And not too much going into this, just wearing my new Twins hat that I just picked up. And not that that's gonna do anything with what we're picking here, but I'm just going to go through a couple of these, do it quickly, fire off who I am voting for at least right now at the beginning of June. Maybe I'll do another one of these maybe closer to when the picks are going on. So it looks like June 5th to June 27th, they're doing like the first phase of it. And then I guess they're going to really go ham over 5 days at the end of June here to vote for the starters. So we're going to start off, we're going to do first base. I guess I'm going to do both sides at the same time here. I'm not going to talk about everybody. Sometimes I'm going to pick a little bit of bias here. For those of you that don't know, I am a Blue Jays fan. It's going to be hard to pick a Jays player, but this first area might be the only time I do pick one along the way here. But overall, I'm going to just pick like fans do. I'm not necessarily going to pick who is the best player this season. An all-star game, in my opinion, does have to kind of be all-stars. Like, one season doesn't necessarily mean you're an all-star in my books. Sometimes it's the guy that's been around for 10 seasons, been a solid player, continues to be a solid player, and maybe we'll run into a couple of those situations. We'll see. Kind of just going off it here, winging it, no editing, just jumping into it and going through it. So on the American League side, first base, I want to give a couple shout outs here. Josh Naylor, even though he's batting .229, I know him on Cleveland. He's been a monster. 44 RBIs, 16 homers. He's a big part of what their success has been. I wouldn't be surprised to see him be able to get in there. Another shout out, of course, Ryan Mountcastle, who continues to just absolutely demolish Blue Jays. Rizzo's always been around for a long time too. But for me, it's really not too much of a debate on my pick. I'm gonna go with Vladdy. First of all, he's probably gonna be the only Blue Jay that does get in there. He's turned his season around. He had a really rough start. He's now batting .293. He only has 6 home runs, 27 RBIs, and 800 OPS. But I think it's gonna turn around, and I think when we talk about star power, he really represents the Blue Jays, and I think he's pretty much a lock for this spot in my books. Torkelson kind of didn't highlight on him, but he's been sent to AAA, but somehow you can vote for him, so maybe that'd be interesting if we just vote him in. On the National League side, there's a couple of guys that I really like. Goldschmidt, been a fan for him for a while. I think he's having a really bad season. He's kind of slowed down a little bit, and ever since going to St. Louis, he hasn't been super great. Matt Olson, someone to shout out. Christian Walker. But to me, it's really coming down to two guys, Freddie Freeman or Bryce Harper. Pete Alonso, we'll see him likely in the home run derby, right? He's a big part. He's got 14 home runs. But if I'm looking for the best first baseman in the National League, maybe it's a little bit of Canadian bias here, but I like Freddie Freeman. Wouldn't hold it against you going with Bryce Harper because, of course, he is absolutely legendary too. But my vote is going to go to Freddie Freeman. If I had to rank top 5 favorite players in the MLB, Freddie Freeman's always in my top 5 overall, so I'd be ashamed not to vote for him. So that moves us on to second base. And we'll start on the American League side. We got some interesting guys at the top. Marcus Semien, Jose Altuve, 2 solid guys who are definitely always deserving to be in the conversation. David Schneider, Blue Jays guy. I will not lean him to be a possible all-star. He's a fan favorite for sure, but all-star, I don't know about that. Jorge Mateo, he's had a pretty good season so far. A little bit down there in the list, and I don't think there's too much competition when we're looking at the American League side of it. And for me, I always think Semien has just been such a solid player for a number of years, always batting in the top of the lineup. Helped carry that team to the World Series last year. I think on Texas, he's by far the most consistent guy, consistently year after year now. So I'm going to go with him. On the National League side, Nolan Gorman, he's at the top of this list, which I guess it is alphabetical order. I forget what. Oh, I'm sorting by home runs right now. So maybe average is somewhat good to go by. I don't know what really you want to look at. But for me, second base, Kendall Marte. It's going to be hard to argue with him. Kind of season he's had so far has been absolutely stellar for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Ozzie Albies always been a big part of Atlanta. He's super fun to watch. Louis Garcia Jr., he's a guy in Washington that's been a big part of what they have done so far this season. So some interesting names, and it's looking like it's a position that is quite different. We see a lot of newer names like Jared Trillo, Nolan Gorman. He's been pretty monster. At least he's showing up in the news a lot lately. Bryson Stott, he's shown up a couple times too and been a big part of some Phillies wins over the season. I know Estrada is probably one of the best parts of the Giants offense. I don't know if that's saying much, but if I have to take a pick, I'm probably going to lean right now. Luis Arraez, I love his batting average. He always getting hits. That's a big part of it for me, but Kendall Marte has just been that all-around amazing player. I think I'm going to go with him as my second baseman for the National League. Getting on to third base here, Royce Lewis. He's only played 2 games this season, and he's absolutely mashed the ball. 2 home runs. Look at that OPS. I think if we were talking about a season where he hasn't been injured, he'd be very much up there in this competition. But this is like a very stacked position, and with Rengifo, he's 329. We got Rafael Devers, who's always such a big part of Boston. Paredes of Tampa Bay has been probably one of their best offensive players. And then we got even Westberg for Baltimore, who's having a breakout kind of season too. And then you even get to the Oakland A's with Toro, who's been one of their more consistent guys. Sure, not a lot of power overall, but I think at the end of the day, we're looking at a team like the Cleveland Guardians. It's hard to discount Jose Ramirez for being in here. Batting 272, 16 home runs. He's right up in there for the leaders of home runs. And 58 RBIs. I think he's been such a major part of that, so he's going to grab my vote there. And then on the National League side, so it's a little more interesting. I probably, without going too much further, I know I'm going to probably pick Alec Baum. But I just want to highlight Nolan Arenado, always one of my favorite players in the league. He's been on a somewhat rough team. He hasn't been anything crazy, but he's always a guy that you want to see in the All-Star. Joey Ortiz, big part of that Corbin Burns trade from Baltimore. He's been a big part of Milwaukee's success. And then if we just want to highlight Austin Riley, a little bit of a down season for him so far. And yeah, I'm not going to touch too much on anyone else because for me, as much as Joey Ortiz has been that breakout, I am going to give it to Alec Baum. 50 RBIs is that's just something I don't want to discount. He's had such a great year so far. On the shortstop side of things, I'd be crazy to vote, I think, for anyone else but Bobby Witt Jr. I know there's going to be O's fans, and especially Gunnar Henderson, like, debatably up there, helping lead the league in the home run department. Such a massive part of this Orioles thing. But to me, Bobby Witt Jr. right now is possibly MVP of the American League. So it just so happens that this position is so stacked. I'm just going to change my vote just so we can unhighlight some of these guys before. Volpe, he's been great. Seager, he's been great. Like, this is just a stacked position overall. We got Bo Bichette, who's had a rough season so far. Of course, I'm not going to squeak him in there at this point. But Carlos Correa, another guy that's not like doing anything to blow the ball out of the water or get anything to really give me that vote. And in my opinion, I've already talked about it, Bobby Witt Jr. is kind of the way it goes. On the other side, we have Trey Turner, Mookie Betts. Like, this is just crazy. I'm surprised they have Mookie here. I guess, has he been playing shortstop and I just haven't realized? Maybe that's the case. I always thought he's been in the outfield. So maybe I missed that kind of switch, and Dodgers, I haven't watched straight up Dodgers box scores too much as of late. CJ Abrams, big part of what Washington's doing, young kid who's really starting to make a way for his name in the league. Ellie De La Cruz, like, this position is just overall always such impactful. Willie Adames, just interesting situations here. If I have to pick between Trey Turner and Mookie Betts, I gotta go with Mookie Betts. Unfortunately, Trey, I don't think you've had as long of a season as him so far. Mookie Betts is definitely making his name for MVP. Catcher side of things, this is where it gets super interesting. I think on the left side, you got the American League, and it's been crazy, honestly, with the catchers. Some of them are really showing out better than I would have expected. Connor Wong, never really expected him coming in this season to put up the kind of numbers he has. He's batting .322. That's a little bit of a surprise to me just looking at this coming in. Adley Rutschman, no surprise to see him on top of this list. He's probably who I have to lean at this point. Ryan Jeffers, big part of Minnesota. I'd kind of consider him. But other than that, like, not a whole lot for me to choose from in terms of this. Got to give a shout out to Salvador Perez, though. Very much should be in the All-Star. I would assume he's going to be going. He's having an amazing season. The Royals have been great. He's a veteran. He's a big part of this Royals team going forward. He was always saying that he wanted to be a part of this rebuild, etc., etc. But for me, I'm picking the young boy, Adley. We want to see him in there. And on the other side, I don't think there's too much of a debate, but looking at some of these numbers, I'm a little surprised by Will Smith. He's up there in batting average. It kind of caught me off guard. I didn't realize he was having such a consistent season. Maybe that's just going because I'm not watching a lot of the Dodgers. William Contreras, he's kind of the guy I'm leaning for at this point. I think he's been such an important part of how this Milwaukee Brewers offense has been going. But of course, I always have a soft spot for JT Realmuto. The other Contreras, he's out with an injury, but before that, he was being a big part of the Cardinals being able to sort it out, right? So for now, I'm just going to stick with the Milwaukee Brewers there. And then we go into some outfielders. And I think on the left side, there's a couple guys that are like just automatic locks when we're talking about all-stars. Aaron Judge being one of those guys. Guy's absolutely destroying the baseball. He's definitely leading the league now, 21 home runs. We know his friend, he's got to be up here too. I'm going to sort by home runs. Because Juan Soto, he's got to be the other guy. Like, these two guys are just absolutely demolishing the baseball. And then when we start looking, well, I look for outfielders, you're kind of looking for power, right? So, like, Garcia's a big part. His average is way down, though. That's a little bit concerning this year. I know he's missed some time as well, and Texas has been struggling a little bit. So that part's kind of worrisome. Riley Green's a little interesting. Tyler O'Neill for a long time was really in the news for hitting a lot of home runs early in the season. When we start looking at RBIs, Alex Verdugo's in there. I'm not going to go for a third Yankee. It's just not possible for me. Looking for that third vote. It's going to be tough. I'm probably going to just scroll down here a little bit and just see if there's anyone that sticks out to me as one of my favorites or someone that maybe I'm not thinking about off the top of my head. But when I'm starting to scroll down that far down, it's starting to look like I'm going to be leaning towards one of the topper guys. So I do want to give a shout out. Taylor Ward, he's been at the top of the Angels lineup. He's had a pretty solid season. He's always batting in the leadoff. Pretty interesting spot. Tommy Pham coming into Chicago. He's been one of their best offensive players since he started playing for them. But for this, maybe I go with Stephen Kwan. I don't know. I know he got injured. I think he came back. I can't know off the top of my head. But I think with him, he's been such a big part of them. Definitely in a couple of their winning situations. So I think I'm going to go with Stephen Kwan as my third pick in the outfield. Going to the other side, there's one guy I know for sure, right, when I'm seeing his name that I'm throwing in there, and that's Christian Yelich. He's been in this league for a decade plus. He's been so good at so many different years. We saw that little lull he had a couple of years ago. Maybe for a couple of years there, he was struggling, but so it's so nice to see him have a pretty successful year so far this year. So I want to see him in the All-Star game. Erickson Profar on the Padres side, I think it's pretty much a given for me. I think he's been one of the best players, especially when it comes to fantasy-wise, in terms of all five-tool player being in there. So for me, it's a big part. Those guys are both leading the averages, not entirely a lot of power. So we're going to want to bring in some power. Teoscar Hernandez is leading the outfields with 12 home runs. It's a pretty far cry from what we've seen on the American League side, which is pretty interesting. Cody Bellinger, someone I want to consider. Tatis Jr., of course, is one of those guys I was talking about earlier who's just going to be an all-star, right? Like, he's just that all-star capable kind of stuff. Lourdes Gurriel, we've seen Jazz Chisholm did a couple of grand slams throughout this. So no one's standing out as the guy I want to pick. Churio, not really going to go with him. He's been a good rookie, but nothing too crazy. Spencer Steer, 40 RBIs. Don't know a whole much about him, so I don't know if I'm going to really lean too much toward him. Brian Reynolds, someone on the Pirates, maybe someone to consider to throw in there. He's always been such a solid part of that, and maybe I'll represent some Pirates on this National League team and throw in some Brian Reynolds, because we know who's going to go into the DH spot. It's not even a question for them. A, Ohtani mashes, and B, he's Ohtani, so like he has to be at the All-Star game. And then on the left side, it's kind of interesting how they sort this out. Don't know exactly how they decided who's going to be designated hitter, who's not. Maybe it's just based on, I know a couple of these guys are mostly designated hitters like every time, but I was kind of interested how they do it. Seems pretty gung-ho that I'm going to have to go with a specific guy, Yordan Alvarez, and that's pretty much it, guys. Let's see if I can review my picks. Let's see what happens. I kind of want to do it. Let's see. Maybe I can get it all on one screen. There you guys have it. There you go. That's what I'm going with for my first pick of the season. No pitchers, I guess, in this, which is kind of interesting. I guess they do a different way of doing this. I normally don't do this, so this is the first time I got a couple people asking me to fill one of these ballots out. So hopefully you guys like it. I'm interested. What do you guys think? What are some positions where you think I'm pretty much out of it? But I think overall these guys are all all-stars. I don't think you can really argue with that. You probably are leaning different ways in different positions. Sure, you're probably going to have your own biases, much like I do. You saw it with the Vladdy pick. Maybe he's not the best first baseman, but I think he's an all-star with all said and done. If you guys made it this far, thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. If you don't, we are on our way. We're growing big, and I do giveaways along the way. So, yeah, you got to be a subscriber for that. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Peace out.